This is the Kestrel Country Podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Kestrel Country. Well, Nethaniel Ealy, thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. It's
Thanks
my
for
pleasure.
joining me.
Like I said, I'm here for you, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right.
With Ealy Construction, sporting
Yes.
your hat.
Yes.
That's good. The big E. So for those who don't know you, I thought we should back up a little bit.
Sure.
We, you and I have had a connection since we first met because of our home states.
This is true.
You're from Michigan.
The great state of Michigan.
But we met in Idaho, which is funny.
Also true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, you growing up in Michigan. How'd you get into construction? Give us a little bit of that background.
Sure. Grew up in Michigan in the northern part of the Lower Peninsula, so officially a troll. For those who are not familiar with Michigan, that means under the bridge.
Yeah.
So,
but God's
right?
country.
But
I mean,
yes.
it's gorgeous.
Yes,
up there.
gorgeous up there. My dad is a carpenter, and he's been a carpenter for 51 years now.
Wow.
So he's out there doing it right now down the road.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Some longevity.
Grew up with the trades and worked construction pretty much every summer that I could since I was 10 years old. Not by choice, but by force. Yes.
But now by choice. Yeah. So something stuck.
Yes. So I really, really enjoy the construction community. I enjoy the results of construction. I am not a carpenter, and that was the journey that I had to realize. So taking those two off is just this is my illustration that I carry with me about why I am not a good carpenter, but I have the utmost respect for good carpenters. And in our company, that's basically my job, is to make it the easiest place for excellent carpenters to work. So
okay.
that's basically a summary of what we do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you came out to Idaho. Mm-hmm. You were overseas before that, though, right?
I was. I was a year in Germany. Yep. And before I came out here. And then
does that have any impact on the way you run your business now, or?
It would be hard to quantify if it did. I mean, I did actually go back to Germany 2 other times and work there. I worked in the vineyards one time.
Oh, really?
Harvesting grapes, making wine. And then another time I went there and I did decorative metalworking apprenticeship. And we built a 27-foot across cathedral chandelier and coated it with gold.
Whoa.
So that was pretty cool just to learn.
That's awesome.
So there are still some definite artistic craftsman things that I do enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like that culture very detail oriented. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Absolutely. So,
and then made it to Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Moved to Idaho. Came out here for New St. Andrews College. Really enjoyed that, and that definitely helps my business every day. The liberal arts education certainly has given me the tools to teach myself and to keep growing as an entrepreneur.
So construction from liberal arts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
business from liberal arts.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what you're saying. Learning different things. That's the main, how to learn. Mm-hmm. Is that the main impact?
Yep. How to learn, just a curiosity about different arenas, and then the inevitable overlap that you'll find, and how you can learn something in an area that seems completely disconnected, and then bring a value principle over and end up innovating in a market that otherwise wouldn't have that cross-pollination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome.
So, very, very grateful for that. And then outside of after college, it was boom time, 2005. I chose to travel and do a few things before jumping into a career, because I finished a semester early. But then got sucked right into construction because people had heard that I had skills, and so got hunted down and worked on a crew for about 6 months. Became effectively the foreman at the last couple months, and then I cut my fingers off the second to last day in the field, and then had a couple weeks recovering over Christmas, and went right to work as a founder / project manager for a launching new construction company in town that never emerged, but I spent 6 months there. Helping co-design efficient homes with an architect out of Spokane, liaising with the city to work on the development side and the refining the plat map, and writing a business plan, remodeling an office, all that type of stuff, and then getting fired, and then starting my own business, and then that he never built anything. I got a check.
Because that was, you said 2005, so that's like going right into the recession.
Yeah, this was now 2005, 6. Yeah, yep, 2005 into 6. And then 6 months. Well, it wasn't in the recession yet. No, that was still, things were still hot. So in 2006 here in this market.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember the recession started elsewhere, and then everything takes 18 to 24 months to get here.
Started early in Detroit, back in the home country. Yeah.
So we had some good years. So within 6 months later, I had 5 people on the team. So it was just like 6 months, and we were up and rolling. And then 2 years later, I laid all 8 or 9 full-time employees off, and it was back to me with a tool belt when the recession finally settled in here in Moscow.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
So those 2 years of doing that, when you had those folks working for you, what were you doing? New construction mostly?
Now, mostly repairs and remodel.
Okay.
Yep. Mostly a lot of student housing repairs, but some additions and interior remodels too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's now what you're doing, right?
That is what we do exclusively now. Is just we're known as like high end remodel, and also we do quite a bit of light commercial remodel. Yep.
Okay.
So we don't do the repairs so much anymore. That type of thing.
Did you do new construction for a time?
Mm-hmm. We've built a few new houses here in the area, and we decided that wasn't our cup of tea. There seemed to be more contractors in our area doing that than remodeling by far, and there still are. There's, as far as I know, we're the only dedicated remodeling company in Moscow or Pullman.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a more crowded market. And ironically, what we saw is that the margins are tougher in new construction. A lot of people, from our firsthand, knowledge and interaction, don't actually track their profitability or numbers, and so they just think they're doing well if they're building. Yep. But at the end of the day, it's pretty tough to run a business that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the remodeling was that focusing exclusively on that, mostly a market decision, business decision, or is that something that you and your team just found you enjoyed more as well?
Absolutely both. Yeah.
Both.
So in our market, we have a highly inefficient market. And so, the easiest illustration would be like, in other markets, it takes, maybe 4 to 6 months to do a super basic starter home. Here, it probably takes 9 to 12 months to do a super basic starter home. You could say similarly for a custom home, it's going to take maybe 50% longer here to do that home. Well, for that same time period, you've basically extended the overhead expenses by 50%. And overhead is one of the biggest expenses in construction. And so you have similar or actually more lean margins overall, gross margins, and then you have greater overhead. And so your net margin is terrible, actually. And construction is generally based on efficiency. If you're inefficient, you're not making money at all. Yeah. And so when people talk about, the expense of construction here, many times we hear, different reasons for it. A lot of times it's pointed to, maybe developers or maybe builders. In actuality, it's a total sum of the whole market and its inefficiency. Yeah.
Do you see opportunities? Obviously, you must in the remodeling space, but overall for improving that efficiency, or obviously there's always opportunities to improve efficiency. Yeah. But are some of those things just because of the size of our market and that kind of thing? Or do you think it's just there needs to be some systematic change? So
I think there were 3 or 4 questions there, and I would say yes to all of them is from what I could, my quick take.
Okay. Because from a non-professional, not being in that business, one of the things that I see on a superficial level, right, is just back home when we did it. Like I was on a framing crew, and we had 8 guys framing, and that's all we did was framing. And you're just, but a lot of that is because of the size of the market, right? Yes. There are just scads of only drywall contractors, right? There are scads of guys who are very specialized. And my dad always gives the illustration of, it's like he can get 5 bids for exterior caulk Like
Yeah.
not even paint,
Yeah,
like
correct.
just color,
to color.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
correct. And that doesn't even exist here.
Yeah.
Like somebody would like look at you with a alien type look if you asked that.
Yeah. Right.
That is definitely a huge part of it. So our last I saw some official numbers, there was something like 400 trade related jobs on the entire Palouse. So that is nothing for the entire area. That's just so underserved. And who knows how accurate those numbers are compared to the reality now, but that's probably that was like labor data. So we're jobs who are identifying in the trades in one form or another on a tax form. Basically we are underserved. Overall, we're just far enough away from Spokane that people generally don't want to drive down here for their work or Coeur d'Alene. And if things are busy, they're not going to leave because they've got tons of work where they're at. If things are not that busy, they can try to come down here, but then they're not that busy. So there's usually not a lot of work for them to come down for. And they have to, be charged a premium for it or eat the cost of the travel, which is not insignificant, especially as labor rates continue to rise.
Yeah.
Basically where we're at in our market is we're fairly isolated. We have a limited trade base. When I look at this, the solution is really to, so we're a general remodeler, and there's general contractors, meaning we're quarterbacking the projects. We're in charge of them. We're taking the responsibility on, but we have to actually go back down to the trade level and the supplier level, and actually bolster our individual subcontractors and our individual suppliers, and get them efficient and get them lean and competitive before we can ever hope at a macro level to impact the market. So that's kind of what we're doing. We've actually been, basically running campaigns to recruit and bring other businesses to the area. It could be a one-off subcontractor. It could be purchasing a company, bringing them in, to town, or it could also be just organically growing them. So we're trying all the above. And then when it comes to supply chain, getting connected on a broader scale, we're part of some national buying groups. It gives us way, way better purchasing power and better service. And so we're able to pass that on to our clients. Yeah. So I think these are the basic ways that we're doing that internally. And I think these are the things I'd commend to the industry locally as well.
Yeah. What have you found any particular, like what's been the worst gap in terms of subcontractors or the hardest thing to find? Maybe two reasons for asking that. One, just curiosity, but also like, okay, so if you are recruiting people, what are the types of people you need? Or as, selfishly, right? Like my sons are getting older. Yeah. It's like, so what are the types of trades that maybe they should focus on?
Sure. Typically the MEP trades are the top. So MEP is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Your heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical contractors are the toughest, and they're the toughest because they're the ones that require specialty licensing and specialty schooling. So there's a much higher cost of investment to get there, to get functional in those trades. And also the state of Idaho requires thousands and thousands of hours of education in each of these. In fact, it's 16,000 hours to become a master in any one of these trades in Idaho currently. And if you come from out of state in several of these positions, you have to be able to verify your hours in a way that Idaho says is agreeable to the state of Idaho. So they may even discount hours you've had in other states. They may not accept them. And it's quite a process. If you come in as a fully licensed, let's say you've been a master electrician for 30 years and you come to Idaho, you got to go back and take the test. They're not going to.
Really?
Yep. And so this is actually a live thing right now.
Interesting.
Yeah, our representative, Brandon Mitchell, who's been very helpful in this regard, just asked me to draft a summary of those specialty requirements so that he can examine this in our legislature right now and maybe look to make some changes. It's ironic to me, and this is, again, something we've conveyed to Representative Mitchell, that a homeowner can do any one of these things in their own home with zero training. Okay. Yeah. So it's not like we're talking like crazy,
which
dangerous.
In my opinion is a good thing.
I will agree with you.
That part is good.
I will agree with you because they're also inspected still. The work's still inspected. It has to pass inspection. So it either passes or it doesn't pass. There's basic standards. They're national. They're updated. They're looked at by a professional. who we pay to have them look at it. And so that is good enough for the state when it comes to homeowners, but somebody else has to have 16,000 hours, or they have to come to our state and get busted back, take tests, and come work into it. This type of thing makes our trades cost a lot of money, and probably most of the listeners know how hard it is to get just a plumber to show up. It's actually really tough.
Yeah, I had some people when we had that cold snap. I had people texting me saying like, "Hey, do you know anybody who could help me?" I've called multiple plumbers. One of them said, "We don't do frozen pipes." And then another said, "We only do new construction." It's like, wow, like if you can't even get a plumber to help you fix frozen leaky pipes, like that's
serious.
No good.
It's serious. Yeah, exactly.
That's
so
crazy.
we can. So for example, Kansas City, Missouri, and they. You can actually take the national 85 question test, and if you pass it, you have a license.
Wow.
Okay, it's an open book test. I'm not saying it's an easy test,
but there's leaks everywhere in Kansas. I'm just kidding. I have no idea.
So there other states have done this. We're not. It's not like we're just trying to like reinvent something here. There are national standards. If those standards can be met, then why are we penalizing our state and our homeowners? Okay. So there's got to be some sort of change that we can make that will make everything easier, cheaper, faster, and better for our people. So that's one of the things that we're working on as well.
Amen. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I would say those are the pinch points for sure.
Okay.
I mean, you could list off any number of other trades where there's opportunity. I mean, you could pretty much name any one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. What about long-term demand? What do you see? Maybe first, let's just talk about the remodel. So you guys are, I would say you have the reputation of being expensive. You don't shy away from that.
Well, here's what our standard answer for that is it more expensive to have it done right the first time or have it done wrong, the first time? And it sounds like a pat, answer. However, we have clients come into our office all the time whose work we're redoing for them. Okay. So, I mean, we just finished another one where these poor folks had a guy come and do a 90-foot long deck for them on the back of their house. They pulled his business card from a local business. And he came when we showed up on the job site. It had been a year since he started. There was the deck was maybe 20% framed, and the ledger board looked like a dog's hind leg. Okay, I mean you could literally see. I mean that's the beginning of how bad it was. We had to tear the whole thing off and redo it. There was so much damage. There was about $50,000 of damage to the house that we started to repair and redo it, and that's not an uncommon story. Okay. So people call us expensive because here's the other thing. Most contractors, and we used to do this, so that's why I know this. We used to do this. You'd meet with somebody and you'd be like, man, I'm just so excited. This is an opportunity. This is a great job. I really want this job. And so you quote them a low number, okay? You don't quote them a low number to be dishonest. You don't quote them a low number, to manipulate. You're just thinking, well, I'm sure I can get it done for this. It's just this like total optimism, okay? Right. But there's no processes. There's no expertise. There's no, studied habit backing up your number at all. And then the homeowner signs a time and material contract. That's what everybody does. It's whatever the amount of time that's used on the job, whatever the materials cost, plus a markup of some sort that's agreed upon. And that's how the job is contracted. Then the job's done. And if you're lucky, it's like 30% over. Normally it's like 50% or 100% over, and sometimes 200% over what was quoted to the client. Everybody feels terrible. Hopefully the client actually had enough money to pay for the job, and you walk away. So that's what we used to do.
So when you say, to just stop you real quick, you say everybody does that way. Nobody works off of firm bids?
Not in the remodel space.
Not in remodel.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
We do.
For sure.
We work off fixed bids in the remodel space. Okay. So we basically said, we are sick and tired of doing this to clients. We hate the fact that there's just like yucky, disappointed, outcome at the end of every project.
Where you're writing, the client's writing the check at the end. They're just like,
well, and they're usually pretty gracious about it. We have a really kind community here, right? But it's
when they were writing
fault.
at them, not in front of you.
Yeah, that's right. I guarantee it. And we felt disgusting about it too. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing for everybody. So, so basically, we just said we're going to develop a process that just doesn't do this anymore. And so we have a proprietary process. It's just a pre-construction process where we're providing our clients absolute certainty on exactly what they're getting and exactly what the investment is for that upfront, to the penny, guaranteed. And we do it, and we hit it every time. The only time it changes is if the client tells us to change it. Okay.
Yeah.
Or if we literally cannot see something behind a wall, like we don't have X-ray vision, like there's some rot. But our process is actually so thorough, we're looking for that. So it almost never happens. And so that's the giant, value proposition that we come with. It's certainty. Going back to the initial part of this foray in that we're expensive. It's not that we're expensive, it's that we give you the accurate cost up front when everyone else is quoting you the fake cost, and then going and charging you more anyway. So if people actually knew what they actually paid for the job and then compared it to us, we're not expensive at all. And
is some of that also quality?
Examples.
I mean, right? Like do you focus on higher? You said higher end.
Yeah,
earlier.
we do. We're doing
so
higher
there are
end
things
projects.
that it's like
so.
If
you compared an apartment bathroom remodel to the literal national award-winning bathroom remodel that we completed, there's a difference.
Yeah, and that's why I say partly why you don't shy away from it. Right? Is
correct.
like we are focusing on
we work on the upper end of the market, and we work for clients. We actually work for some clients who are not upper end at all. They just want it done as promised, with a please and thank you. That we show up when we say we're going to show up, and we do what we say we're going to do. And so for them, their time is more valuable. So they don't necessarily need a high-end project, but they're like, don't waste my time. Just get it done.
So the follow-on question to that is your higher-end remodeling contractor. What are you seeing from a longer-term demand side of things? Like, are you guys busy? Have you slowed down at all? What do you kind of see in that space?
Yeah, great question. So we can back up to give some history on what we're seeing in terms of qualified leads and project volume. This year, we saw strong volume. When I say this year, beginning of 2022, so not this year. A year ago, we saw strong volume at the beginning of the year. And then we had one of the strangest years we've ever had. In June and July, which normally right around June, we're seeing a huge uptick in inquiries for new projects and project planning. We had 0 qualified leads. 0 in June and July, both months. It was like the spigot turned off at the end of, May? And it turned on again in August. Yeah. And
that's right when interest rates spiked.
Bingo.
Yep.
It was basically, we just saw everybody psychologically, grab their wallet because they were noticing the gas prices and interest rates, in our area. And our area is different from other areas in that all of the projects are entirely financed with cash. It's all cash, not debt. And most any other market in the country, it's actually debt financing construction improvements.
Do you have any idea why that is?
I think it's actually just a cultural aspect of our area. There's a lot of just fiscal conservatism, fiscal responsibility, and so people save cash for their projects.
Now, when you say that, are you? What about like people paying you with cash but getting it from a HELOC?
Not very many. It's part of the conversation. We have very, very few of those. Yeah, it's striking to me actually. Yep. So the amount of projects that we've done on debt, I can count on my 8-fingered hands. Yeah. So and that's in 15, 15, 16 years doing it here. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing. Now, new construction is almost all financed by debt, right?
Right.
So it's a different game. So we could talk about that.
So you saw it turn off in June, but you said it came back on in August.
Right back on August, and it's just going strong right now. We have lots of leads, lots of projects coming in. Don't see them slowing down. We've had so much growth in our area, and also we're seeing a huge uptick in commercial. So we are seeing a transition from residential growth to commercial growth. So the residential's kind of ticking along. It may actually even be slowing a little bit. I have to look at our numbers again here. But the commercial is growing at a huge rate. And so we're seeing a lot more commercial projects come online.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you do remodel again on the commercial side, which makes sense. That's what I've seen from a real estate standpoint is there was a lot of commercial vacancy in the last even 10 years since I've been in the business. A lot of commercial vacancy. Last couple of years, that slack has kind of just come out.
Correct.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Which is good, right? It's really
that's
what
good.
you want to see.
We're seeing businesses come to the area, which is good for everybody. You know, I mean, we need those so that we actually can have jobs for our kids, so we can afford to build these homes and build our communities. I mean, it's all a big symbiotic circle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would think too, the remodel space, generally speaking, right? You hear national trends, that kind of thing, that when the housing market does slow, people remodel their existing home rather than
That's correct.
selling. Especially right now, I mean, one of the things we've been talking about a lot is that with interest rates having doubled in the last 6 months, really, maybe 7, 8 now, you've got so many people who have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage that they're only a couple years into that's fixed at a historically low rate, right? So the incentive for somebody to sell that thing, that asset that they have this low fixed rate on, is going to be very, very low.
Correct.
Versus remodeling it might seem like a great idea, and then you're still sticking with this amazing, rate that you've got.
So some numbers in that arena are that 93% of people with residential mortgages in the country are still sub 4%. 93% are still sub 4%. Okay.
Wow.
So there's also about 7.6, probably more now. This is an old number, like several months old now. $7.6 trillion of equity was created since the beginning of the pandemic. So since March 2020 till now, $7.6 trillion of home equity was created. Okay. So we've got people locked into their rates where they literally almost are housebound just because of their mortgage rates. You've got this unbelievable equity that's untapped in the home, which is a traditional place to find funding for renovations. And you have this disincentive to move geographically. You have, and then you also have some super cycles within the construction industry, meaning just because of the time frame at which there were other housing booms in the past, there's going to be basically tons of roofs that need to be replaced right now. There's going to be tons of flooring that needs to be replaced, and you're going to see tons of kitchens and baths replaced. Those are the 4 segments that have been highlighted by economists in our industry. And so those 4 segments are going bonkers right now and will for the next couple of years, given the factors that we're seeing today.
Interesting.
Yeah. And there is equity in the homes to fuel that growth, even if all other factors do poorly.
Yeah. Huh. So that's just deferred maintenance, essentially.
Yep. Or just the items becoming obsolete because they were installed that many decades ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Are you seeing those as far as supply chain issues? I guess 2 parts of it. Are you seeing particular issues with those segments because of that demand, or is that something you would say is forecast down into the future?
We're seeing supply chain chaos every day still.
You still are?
Every day. Yep, there's still something. So the latest one we heard that's coming down the pipeline, we've probably all heard about the chips that go into cars and how that's hurt car manufacturing.
Yeah.
Well, there's also chips that go into HVAC components, even down to your water heater. Okay, so we're going to be seeing shortages in things like water heaters, furnaces, mini splits, stuff like that, simply because they don't have the chip now. So it's basically like we're seeing like this almost like a rolling blackout type effect within the supply chain. It'll be like this thing today,
it's just a new
that thing tomorrow, and it's constantly just a knock on to the next thing. And we are not seeing any end in sight for the next year, 2 to 3 years probably.
Wow.
Yep.
Huh.
So we'll go to buy.
So
a
garage
product.
doors are back.
Yeah, that's right.
But not.
That's exactly what it'll be. People will be freaking out about garage doors, and then like a few months later, garage doors are fine. But then the certainty, a certain specialty, fastener is now gone, and you can't get it. And then, so everyone goes to the alternative of that product. They wipe out that category, and then it just moves on down the road to the next category. Yep. So,
wow. That's wild.
Yeah, it is. So, we've gotten to the point where we are having clients select a record number of selections and literally saying, you have to be okay with any one of these 6 to proceed.
Just to be able to get them.
Just to be able to get the job done, yeah. And it's gotten better on most categories. It's not quite that bad for most categories now, but.
What about pricing? I know lumber's come way down from what it was.
Yep.
Is anything else softening, or overall materials costs still going up?
I would say overall they are coming down. Yeah, absolutely overall. And I think we're going to see them come down even more, specifically because of the new construction slowdown. So because these interest rates are so high and new construction is getting compressed everywhere, it's going to be a rough year for new construction in terms of growth numbers. There's still going to be plenty of new construction because there's such a high demand, but the rate at which it's occurring is going to be much, much slower than last year because of the interest rates. But what that does is it frees up all those components to be put into the remodeling world. Because everybody was tooling up to meet the greater demand. Now that demand has just been pulled back essentially. So we're going to see a lot of the supply chain stuff be solved because of that alone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a while back in the conversation about profit margins, about a lot of particularly new home builders, right? Don't necessarily think about it. They're just, if they're building, they're doing good,
and
right?
That's new home builders in our market. So there's some very sophisticated new home builders out there. So I just want to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
National versus our market.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've been curious about in terms of prices, right, is new inventory obviously helps overall inventory, which there's a massive shortage of around the country. But how much room does that new inventory have to come down in price? So in terms of, you have basic economic supply demand, right? We create more supply. Demand softened from the interest rates coming up, that should bring prices down, right? But if as we just talked about, the incentive for existing homeowners to sell is mostly gone from those low interest rates, most of your new supply is going to be coming from new construction, it seems to me. And the thing I've been curious about is there going to be room for those prices to come down?
Yeah,
right?
Gotcha.
Because you get a bunch of new $500,000 starter homes doesn't necessarily help, right? Bring down the price of the existing inventory.
That's right. Well, I can speak more on a national scale because we've got actual stats and data there. We are seeing those prices come down, but we're also seeing them come down in a more in creative ways, not just in the gross sales reported. Okay. So what I mean by that is we're seeing creative financing where a lot of developers are actually giving incentives to the buyers where they'll give them, say, a mortgage where they actually get a teaser rate for the first year, and then the teaser rate jumps a little bit the second year, and then normalizes the third. Or they'll actually pay down their points so that their mortgage goes from let's say it was a few months ago and it was over 7%, and they buy it down to like 5.5 or something like that. They buy it down to a number where the client can actually qualify for the loan. It costs them sometimes even $35,000. But instead of putting a concession on the price, they'll actually put that concession into the financing for the buyer. So We're seeing that sort of thing being done with national builders right now. I've heard of none of that type of thing locally. We have a stronger demand here than probably many markets in the country, and at the same time we have almost no supply. I think we were chatting before we hopped on the recording about how there's actually quite a bit of lots coming on the market this year in here, like quite a bit for our area. Yeah. But there's no builders to build on them. And so, I was having this conversation with a few other people even last year saying, I've talked to all these guys who are bringing the lots on, and not one of them has solved the construction problem. So I actually am really curious to see where it goes. I don't know where it's going to go. Maybe somebody is able to recruit, a regional builder or build up a building business and produce new homes at a better rate in terms of the number and better price as well. But I don't see it happening right now. There's just not enough. Demographically speaking, on a national scale, and certainly here locally, there are not even close to enough people coming in the trades. That's still the case, despite lots and lots of conversation about trade schools and recruiting people. There's just not a desire from the younger generation to get into the trades. And so if we don't see that, we're going to continue to see people who have been in the trades for decades and decades age out. We're seeing that right now. Mm-hmm. We're not seeing that filled back in. So fewer and fewer people to build the homes means that the rates of wages are going to continue to rise. So basically, overall, to summarize, material prices are coming down. I think they're going to continue to come down. Wages are going to continue to go up, and then fees from various businesses and subcontractors actually have to go up. Sam Wolkenauer is the North Idaho labor economist. Great guy to listen to if you ever get a chance when he does a presentation. He'll be presenting March 15th up in Coeur d'Alene for the North Idaho Builders Association, or at least present if he's not presenting there. Great guy to connect with. But he pointed out that internal to businesses in Idaho, and I don't recall if this was specific to the trades or not, there was something like 24% internal inflation of costs. So inside the business, things cost almost a quarter more than they used to. Okay.
Wow.
But we at the same time see like this 8% CPI or something like that, consumer price index. And so those are so disparate. The businesses, what this is indicating, haven't even caught their pricing up to their costs.
Right.
So we're going to see businesses left and right raising their prices, not because they want to, but because they have to not become insolvent. And I was pulling up some of the national numbers on profitability, at least in the remodeling sector, and it's compressed this last year. We saw some of the greatest volumes and some of the worst profitability in years across the industry. So I mean, it's people think contractors must be rolling in it. It's like actually most of them are losing their minds and just trying to keep their nose above water.
Yeah. Yep. And it makes some sense that especially if they're super busy, they're probably not looking at their numbers the way they should until now.
Yes.
Right? Until tax
season. Their CPA tells them like retroactively after they've already filed their first and second extensions.
Like you've got to raise your prices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that might be that lag where we start to see that now.
And prices are sticky, right? So let's say your auto mechanic charged you $85 an hour for, since the mid 90s. Well, he's not going to raise it now from 85 to 95. It's going to go from 85 to 135. So that's kind of what we're seeing here and there, and people, of course, are rightly shocked.
Yeah.
But that is a natural consequence of the internal inflation, the cost of doing business, that everyone's experiencing out there. Yeah.
Well, that's cheerful.
Yeah, right.
That's exciting.
So the cheerful, the cheerful thing is there are solutions to this, and it really is about I think for our community, recruiting people to come here. I mean, we have very unique place here. It's a really wonderful place to live. I mean, as we both know, nominated as one of the best places in the country to raise a family.
Yeah,
we've got county seat, regional hospital, colleges, just wonderful cultural aspects of the community. And so that is a selling point. We've recruited people in our own company for some of these selling points, or because of some of these selling points. We've actually also provided temporary housing for them in order to hire them. That's part of the equation.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
So still a labor shortage.
Correct. But we can do this though. It's possible. We just need to be very diligent about recruiting people into the area.
So the temporary housing thing, and I know we gotta wrap up here quick, but the temporary housing thing is interesting because so it seems like there's a little bit of a chicken and egg issue, right?
Yep.
That's absolutely right. You have trouble recruiting the workforce you need because there's no housing for them.
Yep.
But you need that workforce in order to create housing.
So
you guys have done a little bit of that, like temporarily.
Yep.
But what are some ideas for making that more of a long-term solution? Again, if these prices, if the labor costs and everything else is going to have to keep these new construction home prices high, then how are these folks? Is it just going to be by raising wages to allow them to afford to buy a home? Because I know that's a big thing, right? That's partly why you're seeing this is. Man, if I'm am I going to be able to be a plumber and buy a house and raise a family in this town, right?
Yeah. And the answer is yes, you can be, because there's so few that those wages are raising. They can still raise because of the massive demand. So that is an aspect of it. There's definitely a complex equation, but I think that when we're looking for the value production, what value are we producing in our community at every level, whether it's the plumber, the general contractor, the developer, every part of the supply chain. When you do that, that is what's going to solve this. And it won't be this program or that program, because those programs have all been there forever. New ones are coming online, and you get more of what you subsidize and less of what you penalize. So if you produce more subsidized housing, you get more people who need subsidized housing. It's just this weird irony. And so that's not the solution. We just need the market forces to basically get off their laurels and get to work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, that's a good way to end it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathaniel.
Yeah, my pleasure.
A lot to think about.
Yeah.
A lot of action there, and I think especially your bit on Idaho and some of those restrictions and on trades and licensing. That's a good thing. Talk to your representative about it.
Yeah.
And we need to solve some of these things.
I'll give you one more stat. So the National Association of Home Builders does studies periodically, and their most recent one, I believe, was 2021. And they surveyed developers across the country, and I believe the number is 23.8% of housing costs are regulatory in nature. So just to sum that up, about a quarter of the cost of a new home comes from regulation. That's mostly in the land development process and the amount of time, trouble, effort, and money that's spent just to get land partitioned and buildable. But it's also everything down to how much, the national code tells us we have to insulate the wall, everything. So, my stance is that, there's some minimum standards, and above that it should be a choice, but we're seeing standards that are mandated that are essentially pricing people out of the market. And so it's a way of not loving our citizens.
And we're definitely not, we're in Idaho, but we're not immune to that. I think it's easy to think, you hear about how crazy permit fees and stuff are in Seattle. Like, we're nothing like that, but it's still a problem.
It's actually very easy to build here compared to most places. Extremely easy. Our staff here too they're wonderful. Okay. And the national laws still run to us, and they still cost us if we don't push back.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that might be another podcast in and of
Okay.
itself.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Mike. Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.